Welcome. It's going to be a great day. Today we're going to talk about blending colors with the oil brush. I'm using the default, and this is instant dry is off, auto clean is on. And you want the paint to be wet when you're blending, because you can see here on the top it starts to blend already in some cases when you meet. Now let's go to the palette knife, and I am going to choose Hard Wet Blender and start blending these colors together. Now, one thing is that the blenders are using palette knife blender is adding water, simulates adding water to it. Now here I've got it pretty good, and now the thing is to know when to stop, because I got a pretty good blend here. But I kept going and overworked it, and this is some things artists do from time to time. So now I'm kind of losing that good blend that I had, and I'm still going back, kind of trying to save it. Okay, now let's try blending perpendicular to the strokes. Now this gives a different type of effect. It's not a smooth blend. Thing to consider is that the blending may also be part of the style that you want. It may be part of the texture that you want to effect in your paintings. So while this may not give a traditional blend, it may give a texture that you want. And I'm pulling from left to right and from right to left, and I'm just going back and forth. So that's a pretty good blend there. Now let's use the just blend color. Now this is a flat edge. You can tell by the way the cursor looks. And normally that is not the first choice for blending, but you can make it work with some patience. And once again, early on, I kind of had it, a nice blend, but it kept overworking it. And okay, this is not bad here. Okay, now again, I'm going to pull perpendicular back and forth. So just pulling from left to right, from the red into the black, and now from the blue into the red. I mean, from the red into the blue, blue into the red. So you can see it's kind of unsuccessful. So this doesn't really work in a perpendicular fashion. Now on the bottom row, I've left some space because you can get some different effects with the blending when you're using it here. So now this blend is kind of working, and it's not bad. Okay, let's see how this works perpendicularly. Still kind of messy, hardly any control. So just pulling red into the blue, and pulling blue into the red. So you can see it's really just pushing the colors around. And that's mostly what your flat and edge palette knives will do. It's just push the color around. There's no water added to these. Now let's go back to our Hard Wet Blender. And you can see right away it starts spreading the color, and you start getting a good blend. So now that I know what happened the first time, I'm being a little bit cautious with my blending and trying not to overwork it. And let me do this perpendicular. So right away still starts to spread the color. And what happens with the Hard Wet Blender and Harsh Chaos and Small Frost and Tiny Frost is it creates a larger drip spike. And also when you're blending, you probably want to start with a large brush size and then go to a smaller brush size to kind of fine tune it. And with these blenders that I mentioned, Hardware Blender and Harsh Chaos and Small Frost, they're probably better at smaller sizes anyway. So don't start too large with those. I'm using all of these the default size, so you have a point of comparison, so you can go off on your own and do your own experiments. Now I'm going to use the Trius Brush here, and I'm going down to center to bring these colors together. Now here you see the actual color of the Driest Brush, because really it's just a pale version of the color that's selected in the color picker. So if you don't let your stylus up, then you can maintain contact and keep blending the color. But as soon as you let it up, there it is. You got that color again. So even if you Control Z, it's still going to be this, and you got to start all over. So now I've lost what I had, so I got to go back in and get the blending. And again, it's pulling colors from left to right, also with that default color that is the brush. So now I've kind of got this back working again, and I've got some sort of blending to it. But again, once you lift that stylus up, it starts all over because you see the actual color of your Driest brush. Now, one thing I should mention here, this video is kind of long, and I'm going to give you a point to jump off because the last half of the video kind of shows the blenders that don't work as well. I'm showing you the beginning, the ones that work better. Well, most of them work better. But if you stay to the end, I think you may find that if you're a true artist, you may see something that you may use stylistically, texturally, may benefit you. I encourage you to watch it all. I mean, this is not the most exciting stuff, but this is the foundation. This is what you need to know to get your paintings to look good. So here again, I'm using the Driest brush with the space in between, and it's kind of harder to get a blend with that white space in between. You got to work it a little bit more. It takes a little bit more effort, more time. And speaking of time, the more time that you do spend with blending, the better it will be. I'm doing these, very quickly just to kind of show you how these work or don't work, as the case may be. But keep in mind that when you're doing your own paintings, you should spend a little bit more time with it and fine-tune the palette knife, or in this case, I'm using an oil brush to blend, just a Driest brush. So you're not necessarily limited to just using the palette knife for blending or mixing the colors. So here we see that now this, you get a little bit better of an effect with that white space in between when you're using the Driest brush. It's not all bad. Okay, let's go to a fresh layer. And we're going to use the unclean brush now. Again, still using an oil brush. This is one of the selections. And the unclean brush gives a pretty nice blending effect too. Again, you got to work with it a little bit because it's pulling color from whichever side you're starting on. So see here, I'm just stayed on one side and got a bit of a blend. Perpendicular doesn't work as much. Not so well. So, because even when I'm pulling the color, it still has some of the color that I've already selected. Now, if I keep working it, I can get a little bit of purple going, but it's not a smooth purple. Now here with the space in between, works a little bit better. Starting to get purple right away. Get that red and blue mixing. Again with perpendicular, not so much. And the reason I'm saying perpendicular, not horizontal, because all your strokes are not going to be vertical and horizontal. So I've placed down some vertical strokes, but yours may be curving and going all over the place. So it's whatever at a perpendicular angle to the stroke that's on your canvas. Okay, so Now let's look at the palette knife. Look at it. This is the flat. This is the edge. So these two you mostly want to avoid for blending and mixing colors. And you want to stay with wet, blur, flatten edge. Just move paint around. Soft, blur, and wet. Add water. Simulate adding water to the brush, to the palette knife, I should say. Okay, now let's use blurred frosting. Now this is more of a special effect, and this one is not as bad as some of the other frosting that's in one of the presets for the palette knife. And here's frost. This is pretty big, and it doesn't do as good a job as the blurred frosting does. Here's frosted spots, and whoa, this one just goes all out. And this is more of a special effect, so if you want to show some frosted glass or simulate that, this is the perfect setting for that. Okay, hard out smear. This is just pushing colors around, so it's not really going to do much as blend. It's pretty good along the edges of your paint. And here's hard out smudge. Oops, now I'm going to go back to blurred frost and try it with the white space in between. All right, so that's not bad either. It mixes the color together pretty nicely. Not so much of a blend. Let's see what happens with frost. Again, not as successful. In some areas, okay. Others not good, but you don't have a lot of control. You just seeing the brush strokes. Back to frosted spots. And again, much like the above, it's going to do its thing. So again, it's a special effect, so use that with caution. And again, you can see that the hard out smears just moving paint around. Okay, let's go to a fresh layer and see what damage we can do here. So if you want to jump off now, this is probably where you should jump off. But I suggest you watch. And here's the hard out smudge. And this is flat. It's not doing a bad job of blending the colors when it's parallel. This is harsh chaos. Again, a special effect. And may have some use for texture or style that you want to do, but you have less control. And this is heavy blurred frosting. That's not bad, but not really giving me a lot of mixing of the colors or blending. And here's instant blur, which kind of gives you that computer airbrush type of effect, which if you're using the oil paint brush, is probably not what you're going for. Here it is with the white space in between. Kind of just makes things look blurred in between. So it may be good for something in the distance when you maybe want to do something with atmospheric perspective. But again, use it with caution. Here's the heavy blurred frosting. And not that effective with the blurring. Again, it's at 100%. So trying it at a smaller size, you may get better results. And here we are using a flat. It kind of keeps everything separate. It's not really blending the color a little bit, but after working it a little bit, you can kind of see some purple creeping in. Now let's get a fresh layer again. And what am I going to start with this time? Okay, so the hard out smudge, harsh chaos now. maybe blurred, and these are the horizontal, perpendicular strokes added to it. Now here, the instant blur is not too bad if you just want a short, smooth mix. So using it in perpendicular fashion can't work because it doesn't look as computery. Not doing too much with the space in between. Just kind of makes it a mess. There's like a heavy blur frosting. Again, horizontal, perpendicular. Not too bad. Harsh chaos. And the hard out smudge. Again, perpendicular to the strokes. So you do get some mixing, but you see the strokes. And that may not be the effect that you want. All right, a new fresh layer in the studio's last view. Knife edge trail. Okay, not much for blending, but if there's a special effect or texture that you want to achieve, that may be good. Using it parallel, not much. Using a small frost, parallel, and now perpendicular. This is not bad. Not bad. You do get some blending, and it kind of gives a texture to it. Okay, this is not bad here. And even not too bad with the horizontal on the small frost. And here's tiny frost. So using a parallel, pretty good. Using it perpendicular. Actually, again, it gives you a nice texture in between the two colors with that space in between. And if you keep working it, it does give a little bit of a blend to the colors. So that's not bad at all. So now with all of these settings for the palette knives, you can see they each have their own visual settings that you can adjust. So look at those, become used to how they work in the default setting, and then start playing around with one setting at a time, changing it to see what kind of effect it gives. So, but I highly suggest starting off with a larger brush size first, then fine tuning with a smaller brush size. I keep saying brush, but I mean palette knife. But if you're using an oil brush, then that may be the brush too. Well, that's all for today. Please like, share, and comment. I'd definitely like to hear from you. And so you don't miss an episode, please subscribe. Remember, just create.